You're listening to my friend Gary Anderson on Night Dreams Talk Radio, the best in paranormal radio.
Who's friends with all the night dreamers talking to you at night? Gary on the radio, but maybe he's not in sight. Bigfoot's on his tail, flying UFOs, that's right. Gary's talk show radio, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday nights. If you need a friend to talk to, he will always be there. The Night Dreamers talk show will fix your despair. If you want to talk conspiracies, Night Dreamers is for you. Top secret case, alien space, it's Gary with the news. Tune in on the radio, don't let Big Brother know. They're listening to everything, even Gary's late night show.
Here now, the latest news. I'm Guy Ticker, Night Dreams Talk Radio News Director, anchor reporter, and staff taxidermist. Japan's fascination with UFO UAP has reached the halls of government, thanks to a new group that'll make the investigation of UFO incidents a higher priority than it ever has been. The Unidentified Aerial Phenomena Clarification League for Security-Oriented National Security, a name which rolls off the tongue, is chaired by two members of parliament who say they have seen UFOs, also known as UAP. The group's mission is to press the government to track and investigate UFO data and share its information with the U.S. It calls the possibility of the phenomena a major potential threat to national security. Reacting to the formation of the new group, Japan's Chief Cabinet Secretary Yoshimasa Hayashi told reporters that, while the government has never confirmed a UFO sighting, it recognizes the national security implications. Quote, "It is stipulated that every effort should be made to report and analyze any unidentifiable objects in the air that may affect the defense and security of Japan." Close quote. That's what Hayashi told reporters. The announcement, as you can imagine, was met with mixed reactions on Japanese social media platforms. One post said, quote, "These politicians have nothing better to do, so they turn to UFOs. This is not in the public's interest at all." Close quote. Japan has been long a hotbed of UFO sightings. Residents of Kofu, at the foot of Mount Fuji, hope to make their town a UFO tourist magnet, with next year's 50th anniversary of what was labeled a major UFO incident. On February 23, 1975, two boys playing near a vineyard claimed to have seen two orange, flashing, saucer-shaped craft, from which emerged a small being with a big head, long ears, and fangs. Other local residents recounted similar descriptions. Quote, "It scared the life out of me back then," said Katsuhiro Yamahata, who was one of the two boys. Officials in Kofu are planning to erect a monument at that site. I'm Guy Ticker. The news is brought to you by Night Dreams Talk Radio Network. To submit a story or to get all the latest news, go to nightdreamstalkradio.com, because the truth is out there. Broadcasting to you live in his underwear. Sorry. From the studios of Night Dreams Talk Radio, you're listening to Gary Anderson. He's the bomb.
The size of nuclear bombs today has evolved from the 1960s so that they are smaller but more accurate.
Hey, are we talking about weapons or Gary?
Even if the total megatonnage was actually less, the explosive force would be spread out more efficiently across the metropolitan area. So in that case, the actual destruction would be even greater than what I'm about to describe now.
Yeah, we're talking about Gary. On the radio, on the internet, and in worldwide syndication. Get ready for the ride of your life.
The destruction that I'm about to describe is likely an underestimation of what would actually happen. It still gives an adequate sort of approximation of the effects. So here we go.
Here's Gary.
And here I am, and we made it to Friday. I can't believe it, JC. Do you know what happened on an airline going to Australia?
Oh, the guy got to hear this one. It's got to be a good one.
Well, it's better than, well, I don't know. I still think the kid last night, who, while his father was taking an extended bath, got a hold of a cell phone and ordered $1,000 worth of junk food. How could a 6-year-old accomplish that? But could you imagine when the father got out of the bathtub? I don't know where the mother was, but I tell you, $1,000 worth of junk food. But this is not quite as good as last night. But a flight to Australia, a guy went into the restroom and came out naked and ran down the alleyway and tripped over one of the flight attendants, which had hot coffee.
Yeah, sounds like he was just trying to poke some fun at some people. I don't know.
I don't know about that, but I got a funny feeling he was probably arrested.
Yeah, with a few charges. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, maybe he didn't like his clothes. I don't know. Maybe he thought it was a nudist flight. Maybe he got on the wrong plane or something.
I tell you, that poor boy. They done worked him over somewhere, put his handcuffs on him, and his day was hell.
Oh, I don't know about that, but I'll tell you, that's letting everything hang out on the airline.
It is, and that could be dangerous.
It could be. Could you imagine, though, that kid had ordered? I kept thinking about that last night. Well, having 8 children. And some of them did some really weird stuff. I remember one of my children, 2 of them, went to Kentucky Fried Chicken and came home with $100 worth of Kentucky Fried Chicken. Now, that was back, 20 years ago, or 25 years ago. But, that was a lot of chicken back then. But could you imagine getting into his father's cell phone and ordering all this stuff and having Uber or whoever it is delivering all this junk food, from pizzas to candy to soda to you name it?
Yeah, the kid's very intuitive and sneaky at 6 years old.
Well, you know what he's going to become, a politician. I can tell you that.
He's got a bright future ahead of him.
Yeah, let's put him in the White House. Anyway, let's get a little information about our guest here tonight, because I'm telling you, I'm excited to have Thomas back on.
Thomas Jane is an actor, director, and producer, working in Tinseltown for over 25 years. He's a triple Golden Globe nominee for the comedy series Hung, and has starred in such classic genre films as The Mist, Deep Blue Sea, and The Punisher. He directed and starred in the hit sci-fi series The Expanse. Jane won critical acclaim for his role as New York Yankee baseball legend Mickey Mantle in HBO's 61. His credits include Boogie Nights and Stephen King's 1922. Thomas Jane's production company, Renegade Entertainment, has been prolific since launching in late 2019. Thomas Jane recently completed his non-fiction book, A Human's Guide to Visiting Aliens. A combination of cutting-edge scientific insight, exo-speculation, and an incisive, unflinching review of the human condition makes A Human's Guide indispensable for ufologists, futurists, humanists, anyone with a keen interest in the human animal, and where we may or may not be destined as individuals, as a society, and as a species. Thomas Jane's presentation at Contact in the Desert. When Worlds Collide. Humanity versus Visiting Aliens, a collision of worlds. the existence of visiting aliens completely transform our understanding of the universe, of consciousness, and of physics, of good and evil, of life itself. But we can only understand our visitors through the lens of our Western worldview. This set of rules, manners, customs, money, language, and myths that make up modern civilization. Defining the warp and curve of that lens is crucial if we're to grasp who visiting aliens really are and what they might want. By studying humans and their civilization, aliens could be playing the long game of discovering our vulnerabilities and gradually taking us down from within, with little to no destruction of our biosphere and our land. Alternatively, aliens could be here to help us navigate the treacherous road ahead, to elevate our species to a new level of consciousness and being. Or perhaps they're merely observers. These are, after all, interesting times. What we can learn about them may be limited, but what aliens have to teach us about ourselves may be revolutionary. The most powerful tool aliens may have to offer is not free energy or anti-gravity, but the ability to see our reality through the lens of an all-seeing alien eye.
Well, Thomas, welcome back to the show, my friend.
Hey, so nice to be here.
You know,
God.
Again, you have all these different groups of people, that some people think that ETs give off orbs, they're lovable, they would never hurt mankind. Then you have the other ones, who talk about cattle mutilation, human mutilation, people being abducted against their will, experimented on.
Right.
And then you have another group of people that think, well, ETs don't exist, that we are it. What's on our planet is it. There's no other planet, galaxy, solar system that could have intelligent life like we are.
Some people think the world is flat, too.
I've had a couple of those on.
It's really hard to wrap, when you so many different, I was just thinking about this earlier, just we have trouble wrapping our minds around or creating a consensus reality, right? The consensus reality itself is then has to be filtered through your own subjective viewpoint. So that was actually a lot of what my talk was about at Contact in the Desert. Are aliens here to help us? Are they here to hurt us? Or something else?
What was the general view of the people that attended? What's their view? Does the majority of them think that they're friendly and give off orbs, or does a majority think that they're not here friendly?
I think you've got a lot of folks in both camps and some folks in neither camp. I was super impressed with the level of intelligence of people. I mean, obviously you get some guys who are, wearing body paint and dressed up like the Queen of Sheba, and all that's great. All that makes, adds to the fun, but mostly, there's a reasoned sort of, and I'm not sure if this is true of all UFO conventions, but this one attracts a really smart crowd. So I was impressed. We have a lot of folks who run podcasts. One in particular that I really enjoy is a podcast called UAP Studies, and I think that's on YouTube. I actually did one of their shows. Those guys came down, Jason and his wife, and I was impressed with the intellect that's starting to be applied to the phenomenon, and I think we've really that has always been the case, but we're also, it's a subject that attracts all kinds. And because of these, illegitimacy. And if you look at it through a scientific viewpoint, we're still not, considered, you can't at this moment, although this might be changing, but you can't study ufology in a serious academic university. You're not going to get any grants from the government to study UFOs. So right now it's kind of a free-for-all. So I was impressed with the level of intellect that we saw, and I had a lot of really neat people show up to my my talk, and we had some really interesting conversations afterwards.
What I'm really scared about is what is going on with these, ETs. Again, I just can't buy, because I just look at human civilization going from Cain to Abel, all the way up to now. We are a warrior race, and we're killing people right and left in wars that has never stopped. Multiple wars on this planet. And a lot of people say that, ETs don't do that. They outgrown that. But look how long we've been walking this planet, the campground, and we're still slaughtering people. So I just because a race of whatever they are could be so more advanced, they still could have that type of trait where, they're a warrior race.
Absolutely. There's no correlation between a society's technical advancement and their ethical advancement. We see no correlation that as a society advances technically, they should also advance ethically. However, this kind of sort of savagery that we have been experiencing on our planet since the beginning of time cannot make it very far in an advanced society. And I'll tell you why I think that is. It's because the longer it takes a society to sort of advance, the more things that can go wrong with a planet or a biosphere. In other words, longevity you must branch out from your own home planet. There's so much that can go wrong with it. Look at what's happened on our planet just in the past 15,000 years. So if you're going to really survive, you need to be able to get your shite together enough to sort of come together and cooperate to make it to spread out to different planets. And war slows that cooperative advancement, that slows us down. So if we're sitting here, busy warring with each other, then that means we're going to be on this planet longer because we're not cooperating to get off of it. That's one sort of reason I think that cooperation is more important than sort of the conquering Genghis Khan type of attitude. Let's see how many planets we can, conquer and how many women we can induct into our harem. That's one reason. And the other reason is, what we're doing right now, amazingly, it's coming around again, is nuclear war. Like we are once again on the verge, like a merry-go-round. We did it in the 40s, and then again in the 60s, and now we're doing it again, where we're saber rattling the threat of nuclear war over each other. And alien societies, you can imagine the kind of technology that they would have. They could probably crack a planet in half if they wanted to. They could, maybe pull a Death Star and vaporize an entire planet. And if you're dealing with multiple advanced societies, each with, say, their own planet-cracking death ray, then they're going to have to figure out how to negotiate that landscape in a way that's going to ensure their own survival, right? So they're going to have to come up with some kind of cooperative strategy in order to deal with each other. Otherwise, they vaporize each other, and there's one planet, and they sort of rule. And then we've got like a Stalin, an alien Stalin ruling over the universe. And I don't think that that's the case.
No, but it is really scary with what's going on, especially now and I'm not going to get into war type of thing, but, it's
Right.
also changing our ecosystem. All the bombs being detonated, all this stuff is changing our climate. And, and it's not just in Ukraine, it's worldwide. And they're talking about by the turn of the century, New York is going to be gone. California, pretty much California, Oregon, and Washington is going to be, well, hopefully you're up in the mountains. Otherwise, you can just go fishing out of your cabin in the mountain. That is really scary because, the ice caps are melting and all that. And again, we're more concerned about other stuff. We need to know what's going on. And I am still so upset about, this farce. And if I upset anybody out there, I'm sorry.
Right.
But Congress, I had so many ufologists email me and call me and said, "Hey, Gary, it's all going to come out. We're going to have proof. It's all good." And I said, "It's not going to happen."
Mm-hmm.
And nothing really came out.
No, they're going to try to keep that under wraps as long as they possibly can because it's a threat to their sovereignty. I mean, human sovereignty is really important to these people because that's how they butter their bread. So any threat to human sovereignty, like an advanced extraterrestrial intelligent species from outside of Earth who does not recognize human law, who doesn't care who the president is, who's not busy, dividing up the planet like a pie, isn't beholden to any sort of human sovereignty, and therefore the only rational thing to do is to deny that they exist.
Yeah, they could make that happen one day too. We might not have to worry about a nuclear exchange. They might just say this is enough.
Yeah, I mean, again, interestingly enough, one of the things I talked about at my talk at Contact was game theory, which was developed in the 50s by the Rand Corporation, specifically to deal with the question of multiple countries with nuclear bombs, right? So they got some smart people together and said, listen, we need to figure out what the best strategy is just in dealing with each other. So they came up with a thing called game theory. John von Neumann actually came up with it, who helped crack the atom and create the world that we're living in today. And the most famous sort of game in game theory is called the prisoner's dilemma. And essentially it says you have got two parties who cannot communicate with each other, and they have two options. They can either choose to cooperate with each other or defect, or in other words, sort of go against each other. And in the prisoner's dilemma, you've got two prisoners, and the smart DA sort of gives them the same offer. They says, listen, if you confess, then I'm going to set you free, and your buddy is going to go to jail for 20 years. But if he confesses, then he's going to go free and you're going to go to jail for 20 years. So if you guys cooperate with each other and don't confess, then I've got a problem and I've got to just sort of settle for firearms possession charges or something. But if you both defect, so in other words, if you both confess, then, you're only going to get like 5 years. So the best thing to do, not knowing what the other guy is going to do, the best thing to do logically is to confess, because either you're going to go free or you're going to get a shorter sentence. But the problem is, in the long run, that works out that, you're in jail.
Yeah.
So they started to figure out what the best strategy is for this kind of thing. And there's two basic sort of philosophies. One is to be cooperative or nice, in other words, I'm going to cooperate with my partner, come what may. And the other strategy is I'm going to be sneaky and nasty, and I'm going to figure out how to screw the other guy over and think about my own survival first, which is, sort of like Darwinism, if you think about it. So it kind of it's counterintuitive to sort of cooperate. But it turns out that the best strategy for the prisoner's dilemma is called tit for tat. Tit for tat means, and they did a computer simulation in the 80s and finally put put the question to bed as to what the best strategy is. Tit for tat, essentially, if you starts out cooperating, I'm going to give you the benefit of the doubt and cooperate. If you defect, I'm going to defect too right away. But then if you go back to cooperating, so do I. So it's forgiving. So it doesn't hold a grudge. It's not the older sort of, it's not the turn the other cheek philosophy of Jesus. It's the older, more primal philosophy of an eye for an eye, but don't hold a grudge. And the other advantage of that is that it was clear. It was easy for the other party to figure out what your strategy is. It's not opaque, like sneaky, opaque, like I'm not going to tell you what I'm doing. That never works out. So I think that aliens have to play a form of game theory with each other, just like we're trying to do with different countries. And we're still having trouble, In the late 80s, Reagan and Gorbachev sat down over a weekend because they had like they had 10,000 nuclear bombs each. They spent trillions of dollars. They had enough bombs to destroy the planet 3,000 times over. So they finally sat down and they agreed to start disarming, which they did for a period of time. And they would check each other's, arsenals and make sure that the other guy was doing what he said he was doing. And that went on for a number of years until the Soviet Union collapsed and new people came into power. And NATO smelled weakness with Russia and decided that they would start creeping into Russian territory. And we are where we are today, still sort of not having absorbed the lesson of game theory. But aliens have to play game theory with each other if they are dealing with with other civilizations that could take the other one out in a heartbeat. They've got to develop, in my opinion, cooperative strategies in order to survive. Not because they're nice, not because aliens are, bunny huggers and want all of life to thrive and all that stuff. It's selfish. You're cooperative because that's the best strategy for your own survival.
Well, again, when you think about all this, can you imagine what they think about humanity?
I mean, the other interesting thing that you bring up, what they think about humanity, is that we are very likely not the only ones. We're having this experience of alien visitation, but in my view, if there's multiple advanced civilizations out there, there must be thousands of other less advanced civilizations that advanced societies would have to keep an eye on. In other words, we're not the only ones being visited by visiting advanced societies. We're part of a program. We're part of a monitoring system, a program of perhaps control, where they feel like they would have to keep an eye on us because we're getting smart enough that we can, build nukes and take them into space. And we're only one scientific revolution away from anti-gravity, traveling to other galaxies, other solar systems, and deploying our faulty logic on inflicting that on other planets. So I think that we're part of a program and that we're not the only ones, and that aliens know exactly what we are and where we are in our this point of our evolution, and probably know us better than we know ourselves. They're probably able to predict our movements better than we can.
Probably, and they maybe know the future of mankind too at this rate too. That's the scary part. But we were talking before we went on the air. Back even during World War II, especially Korea. Mm-hmm. That, the GIs would see these flying craft, and they were actually told by the military, their commanders, to shoot on them as the enemy. And again, even back in the Korean War, when, the GIs would shoot on them, they got shot back, not by rays or something. They got shot back with their own ammunition. It just returned back at them.
It's so funny that you bring that up because I actually share one of those stories in my talk for When Worlds Collide, just to illustrate the point of that aliens play a form of tit for tat. In other words, they probably have a cooperative strategy that's also retaliatory. You know, you mess with me, I mess with you right back. And it's also forgiving. If you go back to being nice, so do I. So you want me to tell that story?
Yeah, please do.
It's from Vietnam. It's June 15th, 1968. Along the demilitarized zone between North and South Korea, there's a patrol boat known as PCF-12. It was commanded by a Lieutenant Pete Snyder. He's on a routine night patrol when he's approached by two unidentified lights. They get close enough. Snyder he gets spooked because, you know, the Viet Cong didn't have helicopters. So anything in the sky that wasn't theirs really kind of freaked them out. So he ordered his men to open fire on the lights. And then he called in a group of Phantom F-4 fighter jets who came in, chased them out to sea, firing their missiles at these two strange craft. So later that night, the Hobart, which is an allied ship of the Royal Australian Navy, detected, again, an unidentified aircraft coming in fast. And before they knew what was going on, a missile struck the ship and it killed one soldier, injured two others, and then two more missiles followed in quick succession, hitting the Hobart. So an investigation revealed that the Hobart had been destroyed by U.S. military missiles. They called it an incident of friendly fire. But another explanation is that the alien aircraft that had somehow appropriated the missiles that were fired on it by the Phantom F-4s and then later unleashed these same missiles on the Hobart in an alien judo move, used the force of your enemy against him. And I think that's a perfect example of tit for tat.
Could you imagine if we ever decide to take one out with a nuclear weapon? What would the result be?
Yeah, what kind of tit for tat would that be? Yeah, we were talking earlier about whether or not, you know, one of the debates is whether or not aliens would allow us to sort of blow ourselves up with nuclear missiles.
I don't know. I think they would. Honestly, again, like we were saying, there's so many people think, oh, they would never allow it happen. Yep. You know, again, they talk about, well, this happened at this missile silo in the United States. It happened in the Soviet Union at the time, right? Where all of a sudden but you know what? When you really try to trace that down, my feeling, that's folklore.
You mean it like Malmstrom, where they shut the missiles down?
Yeah.
Yeah, interesting.
Because I tried tracing all that down, and you know, and I have friends that are in the military high up,
right?
And they said that never happened.
But we do have affidavits. We do, in fact, do I have them right here? We do have affidavits. Here's one by Bruce Fenstermacher, and so we've got a bunch of folks who, you know, went on record to swear that these events did happen. So I you know, what's interesting about that is that this certainly sends a message. Hey, we have control over your nuclear arsenal. You know, you think you're in charge, you know, you're not. But I have to agree with you. I think that aliens would let us blow ourselves up. And I'll tell you why I think that is, because this is the game that alien civilizations have to play with each other all the time. It's a cosmic MAD, or mutually assured destruction. I mean, you know, this is a game where the loser is obliterated for all time. And I think that now, if you think about it, that might be a good reason why aliens would show up when they did, which is precisely at the time that the world had to learn to engage in some form of game theory where everybody has to learn the lessons of the game or die trying.
Well, we need it again.
We certainly do. Yeah. I mean, you know, obviously we haven't, we are nowhere near playing game theory with aliens. We can't even play game theory with each other yet, you know?
Well, we do, and that's the whole problem why we get into these situations. I'll tell you that. Well, you know, another thing, you know, when the Congress did their little circus, that's what I call it.
Mhm.
You had all these people from the CIA, the Pentagon, all this stuff. They talked about Roswell. No, that never happened. There was never a crash. We don't have a retrieval unit. We don't have any UFOs. We don't have no alien bodies. We have nothing.
Right.
You know, and here it was, you know, again, then you have some whistleblowers, but then, you know, who do you believe? I mean, this is the situation. But like I always tell everybody, Thomas, you know, if you lie right from the get-go, every country in this planet, they spread propaganda to the population. They have to.
Right.
And you think they're going to come out and after lying, especially if Roswell actually happened in 47,
Right.
you think after all these years, they're going to come out and say, well, you know what, we've been lying to you.
Yeah.
Because if they do that, then people are going to say, well, if you lied to us about this, then you've
Right.
lied about everything else to us.
What else have you lied about? That's right. It's a big problem. And, you know, I mean, the only way that it could happen is if you gave some sort of immunity to the people who had been tasked with keeping these secrets and lying to the public for decades. I mean, nobody wants to come out and say, yeah, actually, you know, that was all a big lie. I was just following orders. You know, it's a mess. And, but I don't think that we're going to look, of course they're lying. They have to lie. It's part of their job. There are several reasons why they would have to maintain that they don't have ultimate control over the destiny of our countries. You know, that we spend trillions of dollars on the military, and yet these guys can turn off our nukes whenever they feel like it. Who's in charge here? You know, so they're certainly not going to do that.
Again, with Contact in the Desert, what did you learn? Did you learn anything new at that event?
Well, I met some new people, that's for sure. You know, and this is an ongoing, evolving conversation, you know, where people have an opportunity to sort of lay their thoughts on the table, test them amongst each other, see what kind of ideas float to the top and which are kind of old. As our technology evolves, then so does our thinking about alien intelligence. Like, I can tell you that what I heard a lot at Contact this year, which is my first year of going there, but there was a lot of talk about AI and alien AI. You know, and how AI may be utilized in an advanced civilization. And I thought that was really interesting to see the conversation sort of be filtered through the latest sort of technologies that are coming online in human society. AI.
Yeah, but AI, here's the thing about AI. I think it's advancing too fast for our own technology, for our civilization. You know, I've had some major producers, directors on the show, other actors, writers, and they're concerned now because AI is eventually going to start replacing, let's face it, writers. Mm-hmm. They're going to have to compete against it, but not just that. In the movie industry, TV industry, like I was telling my listeners a couple of weeks ago, I was watching a movie and I was into it for like 10, 20 minutes. And I kept saying, something is weird about this movie. Then I realized those weren't real people.
Oh,
it was AI generated. The script was AI.
Yeah.
But it took me a few minutes to digest it and say, something is wrong here.
Yeah. And really soon you won't be able to tell at all. You're just going to have to take somebody's word for it, you know. And not only that, but it's, you know, I think in advanced alien societies that have been living with AI for perhaps thousands of years, you know, that they're using very possibly the visitors that we encounter here on Earth are not the progenitor race, that they are in fact artificially intelligent creations, you know, biosynthetic organisms that are sort of tasked with coming down here and doing alien things and monitoring this group of apes in the jungle, making sure that they don't get a hold of the matches.
Yeah, that's a possibility. I mean, even with your industry, are you finding AI starting to take a little hold?
I think AI is an incredible tool. I used it for the first time generating some images for my talk at Contact, and I renamed it. It's not AI. It's absolutely idiotic. That's what AI stands for. It's not AI. What we're dealing with is in machine learning, and it can accomplish some clever things, but we're not dealing with anything close to AI at this point, at least not in the public sector. But yes, I think that what's interesting is that it's, right now you have to become a writer in Hollywood. You need 20 years of hard experience learning the craft and learning the structure and learning the economy that it required to be able to tell a story in an hour and a half. And that takes up most of your time. The ideas, those that come to you in a flash when you're waking up in the morning or when you're taking a walk, you think, oh my gosh, what if I had, a woman who had to travel to a little hotel and her pet was undergoing a medical experiment and she met this con man, those ideas, the inspiration can now become that will become the creative force. In other words, I'll take my inspiration, my paragraph, my page, I'll pump it into the AI, and that'll do the heavy lifting. So I think that the creative aspect, the human creativity required to make something really interesting still comes from the human being, but then the heavy lifting can greatly enhanced by by absolutely idiotic machine learning.
Well, in China, the AI is so advanced. They have cameras in the major cities that not recognize. They can recognize a person's face and within a matter of a second or two, identify who they are. But they have gotten so far advanced that by the way the person walks now, they can even identify them. That's how AI is advancing. And then you have somebody who wants to start implanting people. And I really am dead against that. You mean
in their brain. Implanting a brain chip?
Yep.
Yeah. No, it can't be used for anything but nefarious ends when we're talking about who's controlling the AI. Because right now, 3 companies, who really sort of control the artificial intelligence that gets released to the public sector, there's 3. So that kind of hierarchy cannot hold because whoever controls those companies controls the world. When it comes to turning our lives over to these machines, which is, the point of AI, it sort of will become, my refrigerator is 20 years old because I refuse to get a new one because I don't want my refrigerator listening to me or telling me, what I should be eating. I just want a refrigerator that keeps my food cold, but you can't get one of those anymore. So I keep fixing the one that I have.
But what scares me? This is a true, real quick story. This was a couple years ago. I was talking about a certain bike. Okay, and all I had was with my wife, my cell phone, and I was sitting there saying, this guy makes a handmade bike, and it's really expensive. I wonder if there's anything like it. And then a few minutes later, I went on my phone and guess what was popping up?
Right.
Now, I wasn't on the phone talking about it. My phone was in the pocket. Now, what is the odds? All of a sudden, here's that same bike I'm talking about. Here's the prices, who's the distributor for it, and who the manufacturer is. All that popping up on my phone.
That's right. Yeah, no, they're listening. They're listening all the time, and then once we get into the brain chip stuff, then we're talking about group mind. I know that Duke University is doing tests with brain chips and monkeys. They take 3 monkeys, each with a brain chip, and then they are able to get these monkeys to communicate with each other with using group mind, solve problems that a single monkey couldn't solve on his own. So once that starts happening in humans, we're looking at a brave new world. And it's not so much the technology that scares me, it's the people who are controlling it, and what if they don't like, you're talking about bikes and you get some, ads for more handmade bikes, but what about when they don't like what I'm talking about? What if I'm talking about alien intelligence in a way that gets a little too close to the truth, or if I'm have political views that may be radical, but I'm talking with my wife or my kids, and this is a private conversation, but people are listening, so then that starts affecting my life.
Well, I wouldn't want a self-driving car at that point. I'll tell you that.
Exactly. Yeah. There was that journalist who actually got killed, working on an article for Rolling Stone, and he got too close to the truth. And that wasn't even a self-driving car. They were able to take control of his car, happened here in Los Angeles, and drove it into a tree going 100 miles an hour.
Oh, boy. Again, that's the thing I'm worried about. Like these brain implants, what happens if they don't like the individual? Hey, they can have a, aneurysm or something, all of a sudden from it. I don't know. But again, is it our technology? Is it ET technology? Are some of maybe these corporations is doing it? Maybe are not controlled by, humans, maybe there is life from out there mixed in with people down here. What do you think?
Well, I think you're talking about alien management strategies, right? So if we're getting close to sort of a scientific revolution that would allow us to export our warlike behavior into the backyards of advanced aliens, then they must be here managing, monitoring us. Bob Dean, I know that he had seen some paperwork from the military that they concluded that as early as 1949, planet Earth is and has been the subject of an extensive, thorough, detailed study by several extraterrestrial civilizations. And that if they were malevolent or hostile, there was absolutely nothing we could do about it. So we've known that they've been studying us for quite a while, and what we're not so sure of is how they may be interfering. And I think that they might keep that option open. Maybe they're not so much interfering with us now, but if they wanted to, think of how easy it would be. Think of the microbiome in our gut, which has just recently been discovered that we've got more bacteria living in our bodies than we do cells that make up that body. It's a huge community. They call it the microbiome, and some of those are responsible for generating serotonin that we use. So this microbiome in our body actually lives parasympathetically with us, in that they live off us, and they also contribute to the hormones that our brains need, serotonin being one of them. If you were an alien, you could design a bacteria as part of that microbiome, introduce it into the human gut, and have it pump out, more serotonin, making us a little friendlier. That would be one really covert, easy way to try to manage our society. Another would be to reduce our testosterone levels, because testosterone, as we all know, is what drives men absolutely nuts, from the age of 16 to about, 45, something like that. And it's just complete insanity. I speaking from a recovering testosterone addict myself.
Join the crowd.
And indeed, scientists have said that testosterone levels have indeed decreased dramatically over the past couple of decades. They say that maybe it's there's more obesity. Obesity lowers testosterone levels. There's less smoking. There's less smokers in the world today. Tobacco smoking actually increases testosterone. So these contribute, but according to the scientists, that's not the whole story. There's more going on. Like that doesn't account for the dramatic decrease in testosterone. So that's one way that aliens might covertly influence our society.
Well, you remember the old TV show V and all those?
Great show. V, loved it.
Yeah. You think, I think about, those type of shows, maybe down then in the future, they're prodding us. They're seeing what our military defenses are and what they are not. And, again, maybe it takes 100 or 200 years because we're basing our time on our planet. Right. Their time could be totally different.
Yeah.
So, I mean, hey, we got a caller. Would you mind if we took a caller?
Let's do it.
Okay. Who do we have out there? Caller?
Yes, this is Tom. I have a question for your guest.
Yeah, Tom, go ahead.
I've read several different authors who have proffered the idea that there is a galactic council of different alien races that is overseeing what they call Project Earth. And I just wanted to know what he feels about that idea.
Yeah, a galactic federation. That's certainly Gene Roddenberry, sort of came up with this, and it's a kind of idea that makes so much sense that it would kind of be a shame if there wasn't some sort of galactic federation. And there very well could be more than one galactic federation. And what you're talking about is cooperative strategies. And again, like I've been talking about game theory and how aliens who can destroy each other must come up with cooperative strategies in order to coexist. Well, a galactic federation would certainly be that. And if we see over the past 80 years, hundreds of different kinds of alien call them species, we don't really know, but they're certainly a lot different, and but they all share extremely similar technologies, with their anti-gravity craft, with their so-called solid light, where they're able to sort of lift people and objects through the air using nothing but a light beam. They also have their spacecraft can break apart into two and then merge back together. Abductees report that the walls of the spacecraft, they don't have doors. They actually just open from a seamless area. There's no seams in their doors. In other words, the walls themselves are able to kind of fold open and then fold back in a seamless manner. We hear these kind of things over and over, which leads me to believe that they're sharing some sort of technology. If aliens get to a certain point of advancement, then they probably, share their toys with each other. And they certainly, which leads me to the question, like, well, why would they let these scout craft, why they crash? Sure, that makes sense. It's a universe, lots can go wrong, and especially if they're run by some massive artificially intelligent system, maybe there's a bug every now and then and one crashes. But why do they leave them there for us to find? One reason might be that they want us to start thinking about the universe in new ways. It might be sort of a crib sheet so that we can, start talking about, Einsteinian relativity makes no allowances for anything like anti-gravity. So is that it? Are they giving us a bootstrap or a leg up?
How about a good warning? That would be a good warning to let us know that there is life out there. And, we're not the only one. But, even people in the military, the Navy, especially the ones that are underwater in submarines. They talk about fast movers. And then you have an admiral who is retired admiral has come out and said that there is fast movers, and he believes that there is a alien base deep in the ocean, because we have not even recorded a part of the ocean.
Right, 5%, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. We hear this over and over, and it makes perfect sense that they would have bases that they would be able to move in and out of and create whatever they need to create. I really responded to the 4chan anonymous user that came out last year and stated that the underwater base that he knew about, or she knew about, was used as a factory for creating scout craft that were created specifically for each mission. So they'd be designed with any tools or equipment that they needed inside that craft, would be built and designed and then deployed for that specific mission. And then it would come back and it would be disassembled and sort of repurposed for the next craft. I really thought that was clever, which makes a lot of sense, and also that would mean that they're making all of their tools and scout craft out of materials found here on Earth. So, which means that they're not shipping, huge quantities of steel or parts or, across the universe. All they really need is a self-replicating von Neumann machine to come down here and get to work, starts replicating itself, which makes a lot of sense.
Well, some of the craft they claim, some of the metallic in it is aluminum. And again, if it is aluminum, it's not going to handle, unless they can create a bubble. It's not going to
magnesium, aluminum, but also configured in, super pure. First of all, the magnesium, say, found from the Ubatuba explosion that happened in Brazil. They're still studying that. I know Gary Nolan has just performed some tests on that, and they tested 2 fragments. One fragment they found no unusual isotopic ratios, and the other fragment, actually, they did find a slight variation in isotopic ratios. So exceedingly pure metals and I think they're extruding those metals from the Earth and using materials found here.
It makes logical sense. We got about 3 minutes left. Is there anything you want to say to the listeners?
I'm just having a good time. I could talk to you all night, Gary.
Well, you can do that sometime. You know that. I don't sleep much. But, again, maybe someday, we're going to be told the truth. I don't think it's going to be in my lifetime. I think it's going to take one of these craft to crash in a populated area where then they can't sit there and say, well, it's not real. It's whatever. The other thing is, you'll hear all this with ufologists: false flag, hologram, UFOs, invasion. I don't know if that would ever, fly.
No, I don't think. I think that they're letting us move at our own pace. This is a phenomenon where we have to come to it. It is not coming to us. And that alone tells us something of their intentions. The fact that we are only given as much as we can handle, and they're not pushing themselves onto our society.
Yeah, that's true. Well, hopefully, with things that's going on with Ukraine and everything else, we don't get a French blowjob out of it.
Oh my gosh. Yes. Again, here we go. The merry-go-round is coming around. So I think that aliens actually become more relevant now that we're talking about nuclear war again.
Well, there always been, like World War II, the Foo Fighters, the Korean War. And again, Vietnam, so many. I should have asked Tom, because he was a Vietnam vet along with me.
Even in the Ukraine, just recently, a couple years ago, scientists were studying fast-moving UFOs. They wrote a paper about it. You can Google the Ukrainian scientists who released a paper on these incredibly fast-moving extraterrestrial objects.
Yeah, well, moving faster than our technology. Well, Thomas, I want to thank you so much to coming back on with your busy schedule. And I want you to have a great weekend. And if you ever want to come back on again, get a hold of my producer. And if you want to talk for hours, we can arrange it.
Dynamite.
Okay, my friend.
Blast.
You take care and have a great weekend, will you?
Thanks. You too, pal.
Okay, you take care.
Bye.
Well, we got another great guest. Who's our next guest coming up here?
Our next guest coming up is Jeff Harman, and he is an astrologer, and also he's an experienced and a researcher of many UFOs and aliens.
That's going to be really interesting. Again, with ETs, if you really think about it, what are they really doing? Are they watching us just to see what we could screw up? Our civilization? And again, as we talked about before, maybe we've been rebooted several times and maybe we're on the verge of another reboot. I don't know. But what was that movie where the UFO came, the robot came out, the guy got shot, and he warned the population, and they turned off all the power and communication for an hour. You remember that? The day the Earth stood still.
Yep, that's it.
Maybe that's what we need now as a lesson.
Yeah, or it could end up like that episode on the one you always bring up, Twilight Zone.
Oh, yeah, the served man. Yeah, we're going to take care of you, all right? By the way, if there's any ETs out there listening to the show, you're welcome to come over for a barbecue. I got 2 cases of barbecue sauce, 2 different flavors, mild and extra strength. And if you want to come over, hey, invite some of your friends. We can sit back, get a fire in the pit going, and maybe, hopefully, I'm not the one that's going to be on the pit turning around.
Yeah, that's important that you bring your own ingredients, Gary. That way it saves time for them.
Okay, well, we're going to take a quick break, and then when we come back, we got our next guest. So stay tuned. We'll be right back. You're listening to, Night Dreams Talk Radio. Check out our website at www.nightdreamstalkradio.com. We'll be back in a flash.
Take a journey of adventure and discovery for the enigmatic giants of the forests. Read On the Trail of Bigfoot by Mike Dupler. The author himself describes it this way. Having found possible Sasquatch evidence, namely trees driven into the ground upside down, thought to be territory markers, led me to investigate this creature in my native Ohio. Several years and many forays into Bigfoot territory, I have found incredible evidence, which inspired my book, On the Trail of Bigfoot. Bigfoot is alive and has many fantastic abilities. The evidence is out there for all to see, but you need to know what to look for. My book will inspire those who have answered the call to seek this elusive creature, the Bigfoot. The truth is out there. Read On the Trail of Bigfoot by Mike Dupler. Available now at Amazon.com, BarnesandNoble.com, and IndieBound.org.
And we'll be right back, so stay tuned.
Listen to your heart when he's calling for you. Listen to your heart. There's nothing else you can do. I don't know where you're going, and I don't know why. But listen to your heart. before you tell him goodbye.
Looking for Bigfoot or UFO themed merchandise? Look no further. Explore Night Dreams Talk Radio's store for an array of paranormal goodies, from t-shirts to mouse pads to socks to whatever the heck that thing is. Don't miss out on these unique items. Check us out today at www.nightdreamstalkradio.com. While you're checking out the cool merchandise, go to the latest news tab to find out what's going on in the world and outside the world. Again, go to www.nightdreamstalkradio.com. Do you remember how great paranormal talk radio was in the 80s and 90s? Night Dreams Talk Radio brings back to you talk radio like you remember, with your host, Gary Anderson, broadcasting to you live from his secret compound deep in the great Northwest. Now, here's Gary.
And here I am. And again, I want to thank Thomas Jane being back on for the second time. It was rather informative. And again, I want to take a few minutes here, or a few seconds, as I should say, to thank all the new subscribers on our YouTube channel from the Philippines, Malaysia, Mexico, New Zealand, India, Canada, the UK. It's growing. We've gained like over 33,000 subscribers on our YouTube channel in the last month. As most of you know, YouTube was not the main focus of the show. It's on all the apps and the few radio stations that carry us, and that's where I paid my attention. And a month ago, I made the decision, let's get some people on our YouTube channel. I didn't, JC, I didn't believe it would blow up like it did. It went crazy.
It did. I'm glad it did. I almost an average of 1,000 new subscribers a day. That's incredible.
Yeah, and it's growing. And it's every day. It's just like, wow, another 1,000, another 1,500. Again, we're going to be talking, about UFOs and abductions and strange things with our next guest. So here's a little bit of information about our next guest.
Jeff Harman is a second-generation astrologer, paranormal researcher, and spiritual consultant with 47 years of experience. He's the only astrologer on the planet who stores his clients' records in filing cabinets given to him by the one and only George Carlin. Harman offers detailed personal and business readings using Vedic, Nadi, classical, and astrolocation astrology. He also offers corrective measures, and he works with clients to design custom talismans made with natural, untreated gems. He has solved many paranormal cases involving haunted dwellings, UFO-related events, and possession. He has cleared people, homes, and commercial spaces experiencing negative spiritual attachments, and has assisted treasure hunters in deciding if, when, and where to dig. He's also been contracted for special research projects. Concurrently, Harman has also worked in many areas of the entertainment industry. He has patented technologies, and he's performed forensic work as a sound expert in association with many federal, state, and local government agencies. If you'd like to find out a little more, visit Jeff's website at www.jeffharman.com.
Well, Jeff, welcome to the show, my friend. How are you doing tonight, this Friday?
I'm doing great. Thank you, Gary, for having me on.
Well, your filing cabinets came from the one and only George?
Yeah, that's an interesting story.
Well, can you share that? Because, he's was one of my favorite, comedians out there.
Oh yeah, George was great. He was a nice guy too. When I got to meet him personally, it was back in the '90s. I was working actually on a TV pilot with Greg Morris from Mission Impossible, and I went into this studio down in Santa Monica. And we were recording, and I said to the studio manager, I said, the studio just doesn't sound quite up to par. And I said, I do modifications because, years ago I built a lot of microphones for a lot of different celebrities, and that's how I came to Los Angeles, was working for Hal Roach Studios way back in the late 70s, early 80s. So anyways, he said, well, let me talk to the guy who owns the place. And it was George Carlin and his daughter, Kelly. So actually, Ross Davis, George, and Kelly were all involved in the studio. So I actually ended up making a microphone for George, too. It was a custom mic, which was a lot of fun. And I got to record George in the studio, which was even more fun, I have to tell you. What a character he was. Oh, my God. Anyways, he said to me one day, he says, Jeff, he says, you need any filing cabinets? And I said, yeah, George, I love, big filing cabinets are expensive, So he said, good, get them out of here. He says, I'm getting new ones. So I got it back to my office, right? And I find this Pentaflex folder full of like $100 bills. There probably was $10,000, $15,000 or maybe 5, 10, I don't know, whatever it was. It was a lot. So I took it back to George's office, and he was still there. So he's usually on the road. And I said, George, you left all this money in the filing cabinet. He swipes it out of my hand. He says, where the hell did you grow up? And I said, I was supposed to steal it, right? So he says, here, you get to keep $100 for being uncommonly honest. And I thought, well, that's kind of cool. And I didn't think anything of it all until he passed away in 2008. And I thought, wow, I got a little piece of history here. And it still says George Carlin stationary on one of the handles. I never took it off. So that's my George Carlin story.
Yeah, he was a unique comedian. If you go back how he, hippy-dippy weatherman all the way up, I mean, he changed so much from being that weatherman towards, the end with the HBO type shows he was putting on.
I would have liked to have given George an IQ test. I don't think he would have rang the bell. I think he'd have put a hole through it. He's exceedingly smart. He's the only guy I've ever met. When I shook his hand, he scanned me. He just looked me over. I'm like, okay, this guy, somebody's home. He was really sharp, really an intelligent individual. I liked him.
A big loss with him. Did you ever talk to him about ETs by any chance? UFOs?
No, I never did. George was always busy. He was on the road like 280 days out of the year. And what was fun is before we went into the studio, I got to talk to him a little bit. But George was an observer. Even though he talked a lot, he really observed people. And his office manager, Ross Davis, and I were talking. We all had lattes, and we were getting ready to go in the studio. We were going to test his new microphone that I designed for him. And it was an AKG 414. I love that microphone. It's the same one Johnny Carson used to use, if everybody remembers that little black microphone.
Oh, yeah.
So that's the one I modded for George. And he never got into UFOs with me, but I think he was into a lot of things. George used, there's two people I've worked with in my life. One was Mother Teresa. The other one was George Carlin. And even though they're polar opposites, they actually kind of remind me of the same, modus operandi. She despised humanity's lack of compassion for one another, and George made fun of it. And they're both a lot alike in some ways. They had, the irony of humanity's, I think, outlook at things were, I think, very interestingly reflected by George's humor. It was pretty good. I'll say that.
George, though, honestly, as honest as he was blunt, but he was telling it like it really is.
Yeah, he really was. Well, his best work, I always felt, was language complaints. He was actually invited in 1990 to the Washington Press Club. If anybody's not heard it, jump on the internet, listen to George Carlin Language Complaint, because he talks about how politicians abuse the language. And, oh my God, if there's any question, he wasn't an IQ that rang the bell. I'll tell you what, that'll put it to bed for you.
Yeah,
that is one of my favorite.
And you mentioned Hal Roach Studios. Isn't that where Laurel and Hardy? They
oh yeah, that goes back to the founding of Hollywood. Yeah, That was the one I worked at was down in Marina Del Rey. In fact, who was it? Howard Hughes was had studios down there, and of course RKO was also at the corner of Paramount, where Paramount Pictures is now. But yeah, that's some interesting history there, no question about it.
Well, Hollywood has really changed. You know, I say this all the time. You know, my dad, one of his close friends was James Gardner, the actor. You know, Rockford Files and all that stuff, Notebook and all that. And you know,
great actor.
When I was a kid, I didn't even know who he was. He just would come up to Seattle and visit my father every summer, or my father would sneak off to California and visit him. And one day I recognized, I said, "You look like that guy on that Maverick show." And my dad and James just cracked up laughing. But, you know, he told me a lot about Hollywood. And he was one of the actors that really, how can I say it? He kept his morals. And, you know, he would bend over backwards for people, which a lot of actors, I'll be honest with, they are really stuck up, some of them.
Yeah, he was a really dignified guy. That's what I'd say about him. I never met him, but I think that was the Rockford Files was my favorite show. I mean, you got the trailer, the broken down, you know, Private Eye, and he actually produced that show. I didn't know that, but apparently James Gardner had the crew, and he owned all the camera equipment and the lights and everything. And he that show didn't get canceled. He couldn't do it anymore. He said his knees were getting so bad he couldn't stand up.
Well, the network, you know, he injured his knee the second time because the doctors, they did surgery on it and told him he couldn't go back to it healed. The network kind of was threatening him, so he went back, injured it again, and then you know how networks are.
Oh yeah.
It's
we call it coin operated Hollywood. It's all about money. It's all money. And the sad part is now it's becoming more of agenda. And you know what's interesting, Gary, is when I look at Hollywood, there is a lot of very interesting phenomena surrounding that. You know, I've seen some stuff here in the paranormal. It's pretty interesting stuff. I've actually seen people shapeshift. I've seen people who've literally their hands turn into a claw. And I always thought, okay, maybe I'm a little bit off here. Maybe I'm imagining this, except that they noticed that I saw that. And they got sheepish. And that's what's interesting about this stuff, you know. My paranormal journey started when I was just a little kid. I astral traveled, I think I was about probably 6 years old. I was just a young boy. And I had guinea pigs. And I dreamed that one was lying on its side, and I was up on the third floor of our house, and I ran down. I woke up, ran down, opened up the cage door, and a guinea pig was laying exactly like that. And I said to my mom, I said, I just dreamed this exactly like this. And she said, Jeff, you astral travel. My mother was a really cool, and she died very young at 47 years old, but we had a real special connection. And very interesting. She got me into astrology and the paranormal, and I used to chart UFOs in northern Wisconsin, and I would get her up at 3 o'clock in the morning. She's like, you come down and look at this. And she'd go, oh my God, you're right. Yeah, it's pretty wild. And so it's an interesting journey for me growing up in a family like that.
How old were you when you were charting these UFOs?
I was in my teens. I was in my mid-teens, and that's right when I started getting into astrology. I had a really eccentric uncle, and he bought me this very expensive telescope, and I started, just looking at different stars and planets because I was always interested in astronomy as well. But I grew up in northern Wisconsin. Many people might have heard of that. It's Eagle River area, St. Germain, Sainer. We were a little closer to Sainer than any other town. We were on a little lake called Lost Lake, and we lived right on the lake. And my dad was doing logging at the time, and that was a lot of fun growing up there. I think I drove semi before I drove cars, and it was like Dukes of Hazzard. I mean, it's way out in the middle of nowhere. And I would, you have completely dark skies at night, no street lights, you're in the woods. And I was able to see things that were so amazing. And I had so many different paranormal phenomena that happened to me. And I would track these UFOs, and they would be triangular in shape. Well, a little bit later, I got a motorcycle, right? And it was...
wait a minute. Now, you should never say the word motorcycle. Until I got injured a couple years ago, I was averaging God, 30,000 miles a year on one. And I rode one for, years and years and years. What type of motorcycle was it? I'm dying to know.
Well, that particular one was a 450 Honda. After that, I had a 650 Bonneville. After that, I had a 900 Beamer, and that was like a 73. But my first motorcycle was in 1967. My grandfather, who was a really cool guy, my grandfather was a motorcycle cop back in the late 30s, early 40s. In fact, he actually became Secret Service later, and he guided General MacArthur through some of the parades that he went through in 1946. And boy, if you want to see a picture, I got a picture I can share with you.
Oh,
if you
yeah,
want to
share it. Just hold it up to your camera.
Yeah, here, hang on. Let me fire it up here. This is one of my favorite pictures to show people. Let me make sure I get the right one. This is in 1946. I'm going to share my screen, and you can see it here. That's him right there. That's my grandfather. My cursor's going around. Look at all the old gas pumps. That's probably 1946. MacArthur is hidden behind the flag there. You can see the newscaster there or the news photographer. So that was a pretty interesting thing. But anyways, he came down the stairs in 1967 with my first motorcycle, and it was I'll show you. This was him, and probably in the that's probably early 40s, late 30s, early 40s. That was a knucklehead Harley there.
Oh yeah.
And he was a character. I really liked him. And his name was Royce Grayson. And anyways, he bought me my first motorcycle, and I started riding it. He put a little governor on it, And then I have been riding motorcycles all my life. All my life. In fact, that's how I got in time for the show tonight. We have a little studio down in Beverly Hills, and I had to come up the 405 and across the 101 to get where we're at. And I can tell you, if I wasn't on a motorcycle, I wouldn't have got here. Because it's so, and as you know, there's two kinds of motorcycle riders. There's those that have gone down and those that will go down. Well, I'm definitely the second one. But,
I got to say something because, this is going back about 5 years ago. I've been riding, since like in my 20s.
Yeah.
Never crashed. I crashed once on a scooter. Okay. One of those little plastic Taiwan or whatever they are.
Same.
But I never crashed. And then me and my wife stopped at this little cafe, and there was another biker there. He started talking to us, and he looked at my new Harley I had at the time, and he goes, "Have you ever crashed?" And I go, "Never crashed on a motorcycle."
Wow.
How many miles do you ride a year? Over 20,000. I rode from back, about 5 years ago when California had that big rainstorm. From Sacramento all the way back to Tacoma, Washington, nonstop in the pouring down rain. Didn't bother me. Going up the pass, there was snow going in between, California and Oregon.
Sure.
Never crashed, right? After we finished our meal, I decided to my wife, I said, that's why I took her to the cafe. I had intentions to go buy new bling for my bike at the Harley dealership. And I said, let's go to the Harley dealership. And we go there. And going up the big hill, there was a truck in front of us. There's a light on top of the hill.
Uh-huh.
And when the light changed, the truck moved. There was a huge rock. I hit the rock. I crashed, totaled the bike out. And I'll tell you, it's like jinx, because here I sit there and brake. I never crashed. 30 minutes later, I totaled out the bike.
Oh, my God. Wow. Yeah, you got to be careful. Motorcycles are not something to practice with in California, I'll tell you that. Here, I'll show you my bike since I don't know if, it looks like I'm still sharing. That I was doing an oil change, but that's an Indian. Indian is actually older than Harley. It came out in 1901. Harleys came out in 1907. And I love this bike. I've got almost 100,000 miles on this bike. And I got to tell you, I really like it. It's a beautiful bike, and it's really well set up. It's got pulsars on it, and you can probably see right here. You can see my messy garage, but it's got a lot of safety lights on it. And the cops actually tell me they like that stuff because what it does is it allows them allows me to be seen. And on lane splitting in California is exceedingly dangerous. I get these guys on the crotch rockets riding past me at 80 miles an hour. I'm like, you're crazy, man. I might do 10, 15 miles an hour over the speed limit, but I'm not in a wish to go to an early grave, so I take it pretty slow and conservative, but you can really get places on a bike. It's the only way to go.
Oh, I'll be honest with you again too. I couldn't ride anymore about 5 years ago. I think it really keeps your mind sharper because, unlike a car, you're in the car and you can daydream, you can be flipping the radio dial. When you're on a bike, you have to be so aware of what's in front of you, what's on the side of you, what's behind you. And I think it actually keeps your brain more active and younger. I really do.
Oh, yeah. You got to be sharp. I will not ride. There's certain days, speaking of astrology, I actually track a lot of my charts. When I'm not in good stead, I will not ride. I will take the truck or I will take the car. But you got to be sharp. You bet. It's like a video game here in California, except if you lose, you don't restart. But yeah, it is really dense traffic here. There's no doubt. But it's the greatest way to get around. I love it. I actually look forward to riding my bike every day. I love it. It's a lot of fun.
But
speaking of which, I didn't mean to cut you off. What was that?
I was just going to say, for about 20 some years, I tried to get my wife to, get on the back of my Harley. And the one of them I had was the Firefighter, which is a big bike, and it was a custom bike. And she refused to do it. Then one day she goes, okay. And I wish I never worked at it for 20 years because after that, I couldn't go anywhere. If she was home, she was out there before me waiting for me to take her on the back of the bike. But you had an encounter or something strange on a motorcycle, didn't you?
Oh, many. Yeah, many. In fact, my first one on a motorcycle was back in the 70s. It was in the mid-70s. Excuse me. And what happened was I was coming to a little lake called Kasoma Lake. And it's right along Little St. Germain Lake. And these are very small roads. These are little narrow, roads up in the woods, and this is late at night. And I caught something out of my left rear view mirror and it was pulsing, right? And I thought, well, I look up and sure enough, there's a craft, right? And you can tell they're very hazy. This one was like a cigar-shaped craft. So I kept going, and about another 3 miles, I went on a highway, and then, of course, we came to our lake, which was called Lost Lake. And I'm coming down this hill to the lake, kind of the lake drive, All of a sudden, the bike dies. And I thought, okay, at that time, I had a Bic lighter, right? Everybody smoked, right, in the 70s, right? So I took the Bic lighter, and I checked, no fuses are blown, and I checked everything. So I even arced the battery, because I had a set of tools in there, a little toolkit, nothing. Bike is completely dead. I went, okay. And then I thought, well, I'm going to push it up the street to a friend of mine's house. And I knocked on the door. His father got up. It was 3 o'clock in the morning, right? And he says, Jeff, what's wrong? And I said, well, my bike died. I says, you mind if I just keep it here? And he says, no problem. He says, I'll even give you a ride home. So it's a few miles yet. And he noticed it. He said, what's that up there? And I said, that's the same thing I just saw over on Little St. Germain. And he said, yeah, that's kind of weird. It was heading down, and I would track these crafts. A lot of them would go down into the woods, and I actually think if they didn't land, they certainly hovered. And so the moral of this story is the next morning, I came over with a pickup truck. I thought, well, I'm going to load the bike up and take it home, right? I figured, well, let me give this thing a try. Boom, starts right up. Started up like a top. And I thought, okay. So I've had many encounters where I've had time missing. We've ended up on the other side of a road 30, 20 minutes later. I had one just recently out in Malibu. As many people know, there's a rumor of this huge underground opening to a cavern that is just a little bit north of Zuma Beach. Many people know that as Point Doom, right? And Port Hume. And it's out in the ocean, probably not that far, maybe a mile or two out. So you can actually see it on Google Earth. Now they just scrubbed it, by the way. But there's this huge open cavern there. Well, I was out in Malibu. I was at a place. We were doing some film work. And I look up as I'm leaving, and I'm seeing this craft, a red-shaped craft just pulsing, right? I went, that's no plane. That's no craft that we have. And then, of course, very shortly, it takes off. Well, I get on the bike and I'm heading down the Pacific Coast Highway, and I'm just a little bit past downtown. Well, it's not downtown Malibu. It's Malibu. You blink, you'll miss it. It's just a couple of gas stations in a little village. Anyway, so I'm going along, and all of a sudden, I saw the craziest thing. This cylindrical tube. And it was pretty good size. I would say this thing might have been 30 feet in diameter. And I've never seen anything like it. It was red. It was almost metallic looking. And it had like a chrome bottom on it. It's like a suction tube. It was sticking down out of the sky on the right side, right over the ocean. And I looked and I went, okay, am I seeing things? And I know I wasn't. And of course, on a motorcycle, you got to keep your focus on the road. So I went by and I was looking in the rear view mirror to see if I could see it. I couldn't see it. But I have seen so many things, particularly along the Pacific Coast Highway. I actually remember getting scanned once. I was standing along the ocean. I often like to go to the ocean at night and walk around. You get negative ions. It's really decharging for you. It's very good for all of us. And I was standing there and I literally felt something scanning, and I could hear it psychically in my head. They were looking at, oh, he's mostly vegetarian, he's this and he's that. And I look up and I see this craft hovering out there. And you can tell because these are not, they almost have an LED type of look to them. They don't look like incandescent light like an airplane has. They look strange. And that thing rocketed across the sky seconds later in like a streak. And I've seen that same type of craft down in Rosarito, Mexico. Back in the early 80s, we were wading out in the water. And a friend of mine and I were standing there talking, and we look up and we see a craft just like that. Same thing, rockets off. And I wouldn't even use the word rocket. It's the propagation speed is so fast that it's almost outside of what the eye can track. And it's pretty interesting stuff.
Does any of that ever scare you when you've seen that?
No, it really doesn't. I'm actually intrigued by it. I personally believe that this planet has been inhabited. I think they live among us. I really do. I think they're underground. I mean, listen to the stuff we've heard with Admiral Byrd, back in the 50s, late 40s, early 50s, he took that huge mission, and there's all this interest in Antarctica, right? And of course, the Rockefellers and Rothschilds, they got mountain ranges named after them. And there's all this mystique down there. And apparently, Admiral Byrd, and many people know about this, he took a squadron down underneath Antarctica and was forced down.
Jeff, we need to take a break. I'm so intrigued what you're saying. I forgot what time it is. So we'll be back with Jeff in about 2.5 minutes. You're listening to Night Dreams Talk Radio. We're going to find out more about Admiral Byrd and all this stuff. It's really interesting here tonight. So stay tuned.
I met her in a club down in Old Soho, where you drink champagne and it tastes like Coca-Cola, C-O-L-A Cola. She walked up to me and she asked me to dance. I asked her her name, and in a dark brown voice she said Lola, L-O-L-A Lola, la 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 Lola. Well, I'm not the world's most physical guy, but when she squeezed me tight, she nearly broke my spine. Oh my Lola,
Now, the latest news from the Night Dreams Talk Radio Network newsroom. I'm Guy Ticker. In the 1980s and 90s, the Hudson Valley had one of the biggest clusters of UFO reports in history. In the 1990s, sightings centered around the town of Pine Bush. Lance Hallowell, Director of Museum Operations and Special Events at the Pine Bush UFO and Paranormal Museum, says there were easily close to 3,000 estimated sightings. Remember, from threats to election integrity to the spiraling climate crisis to complex foreign conflicts, our journalists contextualize, investigate, and illuminate the critical stories of our time. We are able to provide a fresh, outsider perspective, one so often missing in the American media. I'm Guy Ticker. The news is brought to you by Night Dreams Talk Radio Network. To submit a story or to get all the latest news, go to nightdreamstalkradio.com. You are listening to Night Dreams Talk Radio Network, the home of Night Dreams Talk Radio, with Gary Anderson, syndicated worldwide. Paranormal Talk Radio, like you remember.
And we are back with Jeff. You know, again, Antarctica. What do you think is really happening there?
You know, I that's a good question. I don't know. I think personally, you know, what was fascinating to me is in the 70s, my mother turned me on to astrology. And I actually thought astrology was crazy at first. And I said, come on, that stuff doesn't work. You know, I've heard all the stories about the doctor in the delivery room having more gravity than, of course, Saturn can, right? And she said, no. She goes, before you knock it, check it out. And I did. And of course, this is BC, before computers. We were doing stuff by hands, you know. And then in the late 70s, we got the Commodore 64. Remember those? And the 128s, we thought we were pretty cool then.
Oh, yeah.
So anyways, long story short, I started noticing in research, and it was in the early 80s, and that's when I was really getting into it. That's when some of the computer programs were getting a little bit better in DOS and so on and so forth. And I started doing a lot of research, not only into astrology, but ancient, you could say, spiritual documents, and particularly, you know, the Vedantic stuff, paranormal research, ghosts, and, you know, all this kind of stuff. And of course, UFOs really interest me. And later, as time went on, I had so many paranormal experiences, and then I really became enamored with studying some of this ancient lore, the Egyptians, the Chaldeans, the Vedantic stuff. And particularly, I have to say, psychiatry and psychology intrigued me on certain individuals who got into the fact that we do not die. Like the Vedantic documents talk about UFOs, they talk about extraterrestrials, they talk about how there's potentially hundreds of planets just like this one in not that far of a distant place, even though in astronomy we know they're light years away. But I don't believe there's any time at all. And what I've come to be involved with is some really fun stuff over the years. And, you know, I met Lynn Buchanan doing the remote viewing back, and I think that was in the late 90s. And I've since been around a lot of different remote viewing groups, and I've done a lot of research. And I've actually had different remote viewing groups say, hey, Jeff, we're getting different targets at sometimes real high accuracies, and other times they're not. And they wanted to see if astrology or astronomy, because I really think astrology is astronomy, and they wanted to see if there was any correlation. So I did quite a few different studies on that, and we found there was a lot of accuracy to how each individual was receiving energies at the time, and also the general terrestrial rotation of the Earth and alignments of various different fixed stars, and the lunar aspects were huge. And So, I've really straddled both sides of the fence, and it's been a real journey for me. And I've seen craft coming in and out of the moon with high-powered telescopes and cameras. I've actually filmed this stuff. It's anybody who thinks stuff isn't going on, I mean, you got to take a closer look. But and again, it's all in the ancient documents, and so many channels have come out with this, the History Channel and Discovery, so on and so forth, about paranormal phenomena, and that we are not alone here on this planet. I think the interesting thing about this is this actually kind of parallels some of the religious documents. Some of these people or craft or beings might actually be demonics and also extraterrestrial. And well, here, I'll put a diagram that I love to show here. This is one of my favorite diagrams here. I'll show you this one. Let me see if I can get to it here. Hopefully you can see this. Can you see this diagram?
Yeah, it says God.
Yeah, exactly. So, without getting into anyone's theology or religious, beliefs, whatever we could say, there's something divine above creation, right? And this diagram is one of my favorite because as you go down here, this first set of worlds is called the world of absolute. This is an Aramaic Hebrew word, and they claim there's 49 dimensions and 49 subdimensions here. This is exceedingly vast, and they say our soul is created right up here. There's no astrology, there's no astronomy per se, as they say in this upper dimensions. The next worlds down is the worlds of Braya, which they say the waters of creation get much, much deeper. And they again claim there's 49 dimensions and 49 subdimensions. Now, many people listening may have heard of an ancient text called the Sefer Yetzirah. Sefer means book, Yetzirah means creation or formation more properly. And this is where they believe the rotating galaxies are. And I know a lot of people have talked lately about 11 dimensions, and I'm not disputing that at all, but they claim there are 49 parallel universes and 49 subdimensions within each one. Now, I'm having a hard time balancing my checkbook. I don't know about conceiving 49 parallel universes. It's pretty deep stuff. And of course, quantum physicists have all mirrored this stuff. And what's fascinating is at the bottom of this is kind of where maybe our solar system is. And then you have the final worlds called the worlds of Asaya. And Asaya means the astral planes. And they claim there could be 49 dimensions and 49 subdimensions in the astral planes. And then, of course, notice we have Earth here. So, and then we have the demonic tree beneath the Earth. Well, they claim, and we hear this in the Bible, we hear this also in many ancient texts, the Chaldeans, the Egyptians, the Vedantic especially, the Rig Veda, the Upanishads. I could go on and on. There's all these documents that talk about how Earth is a place where spirit manifests. And one of the types of astrology that I studied that I thought was most fascinating was something called Nadi astrology. Many people may have heard of the Nadi palm leaves. Well, this is actually using your birth chart. And they claim that an angel or a spiritual being attaches the spirit, psyche, and soul by silver cord at conception before you're born. At conception in the mom's womb. And then they say when we exit mom's womb after the gestation period, which for most of us is about 9 months, literally that's when time starts. And Nadi astrologers actually say the synchronization of time and karma happen right at that first breath. And this is also paralleled in some very ancient Aramaic and Hebrew texts too, where they say the soul, spirit, and psyche time starts, or it's tied to the body at first breath. And I really was intrigued by this kind of, knowledge. And I thought, wow, this is, pretty stunning. So the Earth is like a soul cauldron. And when you think about the amount of human life, which is billions, right? And the amount of animal life, the amount of mineral life, the amount of, plant life, it's just stunning what's going on this planet. And who's to say that we are not walking among many secret beings who can enter in and out of these dimensions? And I believe that's exactly what's happening. In northern Wisconsin, it was about, again, in the mid-70s, I was walking up to a friend's house, And I saw this huge guy. I'm pretty tall. And this guy was towering. He had to be 8 feet plus tall, maybe taller. He was huge. I mean, I just heard the snow crunch and I couldn't see him. And I think it was a Sasquatch or some being like that. He froze. It was kind of late at night. He turned around and took off running. And he went through thick brush so fast, I think he dimension shifted, because we actually went back and tried to find the footprints. We couldn't find them. This guy moved so fast, and the brush was so thick that he ran through. I don't think a deer could have ran through that and not broken off twigs and made a lot of noise. And he was gone. And I've seen stuff like this. And I can tell you, I think the Earth, even though it has its wars and its traumas, and we all have our tough times, one of the things that's very fascinating to me is I think this place is where spirit manifests. The Earth is a place where spirit manifests. And, you know, I've done and seen too many things with astrology and clearing people, disincarnate souls. We call them ghosts, right? But they're really not. I think the religions failed very sorely when they didn't give us the knowledge that we don't die. And of course they do say that, but they don't tell us in such a way that's practically useful for us.
Can I ask you a question, Jeff?
Sure.
You know, I had Michio Kaku on the show, and he said we're so close to cracking the fifth dimension, and where other parallel universes could exist and create bubbles of other, universes. Could what we consist of and consider ghosts actually be our beings when we pass on in the fifth dimension?
Yeah. I mean, one of the books that everybody should go to my podcast. I have a podcast. It's Jeff Harman, Vedic Astrologer, or Jeff Harman Astrologer on YouTube. And we talk about this stuff. And one of my favorite documents to refer to, there's actually 3 of them that prove that we do not die, and that what you're saying, and, we clearly, they actually show that the auric field has 5 layers to it. You have the physical body, then you have what they call the etheric double, and then you have what they call the psychic and noetic double, and it goes out to 5 layers. This isn't my innovation. You can actually read about stuff like this in various different documents. The Vedas talk about this, the Upanishads. There's so many amazing documents that speak to this effect. And it's literally, we are knocked out when we are tied into the body. There's a little mark beneath our noses and our upper lip. It's called the mark of silence by some. And they say that mark is indicative of the lower conscious mind now has to be formed. It's not us. It's like the keyboard, the mouse, and the screen. But what's interesting is you can actually see in this diagram, the planet Saturn might be the escape from Alcatraz that locks us in here. And there's many people in ufology who talk about the crafts that they see coming in and out of the rings of Saturn. There's a lot more here going on than we're being told, that's for sure. And what's interesting about the ancient astrology, a lot of people know their sun signs, right? Everybody knows their sun sign, but this is ancient stuff. This is so different from the Linda Goodman sun sign books. And I'm really blessed to be able to do this stuff every day. I'm doing readings for people. I actually have a lot of clients. Benjamin Franklin used to say, no one would commence an important act without first looking at the celestial energies. And I do a lot of that. I do real estate elections. I set gems at good times. I do, corporate filings. Real estate elections are when people wants to buy or sell a house when you sign with the realtor. That so many people say, well, we can't sell the house, right? And I'll say, well, let's take it off the market, put it on the market at a good time, or let me give you a good time to put it on the market. And of course, what happens is the house sells very quickly, usually, depending on the energies I can get. Surgery elections. So all this stuff, we're living in a matrix. I always say, forget Trinity, Neo, and Morpheus. We really are in a celestial matrix. And, I've actually looked at even some of the, I don't know if you knew George Parks. He was a really wonderful man. He ran MUFON in Tucson, Arizona. And he and Roger Sherrod asked me to do a study on a lot of these UFO phenomena. And we looked at, Minot Air Force Base. I noticed your last guest was talking about that. And we looked at many different, Travis Walton, Snippy the Horse, and many, many different things to see, was there any correlations to abductions or to events happening? And interestingly enough, there's a lot of correlations. I often find many people go through dark nights of the soul when Saturn will make hard aspects in their 12th house. See, Saturn goes around the solar system about every 28 to 29 years. And of course, that's our birth charts as well. And it's quite fascinating to see how accurate this stuff is. And it's really, it's kind of a fun game to look at.
I got to ask you a question. I lost, two sons, but I lost one son
Sorry to hear
who
that.
is a twin to my daughter. And after he passed on, she came up to me and my wife and said, he's communicating with me. And first we thought maybe she was dreaming, but she went on because she was a twin. And she was saying like, well, he's telling me he's playing video games and he's riding his motorcycle and all this elaborate stuff. And I thought it was her imagination. And then one day I was not sleeping, but I was watching TV. And then all of a sudden he came to me in my brain and my thoughts. And he says, don't worry about me, but don't go out on your motorcycle tomorrow.
Wow.
And, just weird things. Is that possible where he's like maybe in another dimension?
Yes, I really encourage people. I just did a podcast a couple back. You can go back in the archives and look at them. One of my favorite books to recommend to people is a book called 30 Years Among the Dead. This was written by Dr. Carl Wicklund, who was he was born in the 1860s. And in the early 1900s, as a psychiatrist, he originally didn't believe in any paranormal phenomena. And what happened was he started getting into research. He met a woman that he married, and she was a psychic channel. And he didn't believe in any of this stuff, right? But knowing that she was very intelligent and that she wasn't delusional, he said, I'm going to research this to see if there's some reality to this. Well, the story goes, his wife took on someone, meaning channeling, a disincarnate soul, like Jonathan Edwards, right? And all of a sudden, the person in her body said, you're the guy shocking me with this lightning. Well, if anybody's ever heard of a Wimhurst generator, that is what they use in shock therapy treatment. It's a very high voltage, like Tesla. If everybody saw Tesla with all that high voltage around them, that's what a Wimhurst generator creates. It's very powerful, but the current's low, so it won't hurt you. So he would shock these schizophrenic and also very depressed patients, and he would notice that they would change, right? Well, in this instance, this person in his wife's body said, you're the guy shocking me with this lightning. And he said, well, what do you mean? And the person went on to explain in excellent and grave detail everything that happened. He says, you couldn't have known that had you not been there. So he got in dialogue with the guy and said, you must be a disincarnate soul. And the guy finally said, that makes a lot of sense. He says, nobody listens to me anymore, and I'm angry, and all my employees and all this stuff. Well, come to find out, this guy ran a pharmacy. That's what it was. And there's so many stories in this book and many others that I mention on this podcast. And it's what happened is once he realized that he was deceased, he was actually not in his body anymore. He woke up kind of, if you will, from the sleep that happens. And he saw his mother, who had, been deceased for 50 years. And after a while, he got him to go off, quote unquote, into the light. Well, guess what? The patient cleared up. That's why this book is called 30 Years Among the Dead, because for the next 30 years, he and his wife were helping lost, disincarnate souls. Now, there are other souls like your son who are very cognizant. They're aware that they're gone, but they can't communicate to us because we operate through the five senses, all the five senses. And of course, that's our interface to the lower conscious mind. But the third eye chakra has been so blocked on all of us that we don't have this psychic connection anymore. And this gets into what Edgar Cayce and many of your ancients were taught. Not he wasn't ancient, but he talked about what many of the ancients talked about, and that is the yugas. They say we've been in a dark age, or our solar system has been going around this binary sun system, and we've really been knocked out, probably since right around the 1st century AD is when it really got bad. And right around the 1700s, we are now moving into what they call a Bronze Age. And of course, many people have heard that we're going into the age of Aquarius. We're not there yet. I don't know about you guys, but does it seem like the age of Aquarius to you? It doesn't to me.
No.
With the wars brewing, and now everybody's talking about World War III. Well, we'll get into that one in a minute. But anyways, they say we will come back, and there's many of us souls that keep coming back here. We keep reincarnating. And, the church in Rome threw the doctrines of reincarnation out the window somewhere between the 1st and the 3rd century. And they were there in ancient Christianity. They absolutely were. And this is fascinating stuff. And, Dr. Wickland's work, also Freeing the Captives, is another book I mentioned by Dr. Fry. One of my favorite books I mentioned on the podcast is the Magus Astrobolos. These all prove we are spiritual beings knocked out, having a physical experience. And many of us are waking up. And I think that as time evolves, we will wake up even more, because the conscious mind in the physical world seeks to pull us down. And we only see with these, but when we start seeing with the pineal gland and the third eye, that's when we see these interdimensional beings.
That makes a lot of sense.
What's really going on.
Yeah. Well, our time is just like almost gone, unless you want to hang on for a few more minutes. I mean, that's up to you, but boy.
No, I can hang on for a minute, yeah.
Yeah. What do you see in the future of mankind?
I think this place is divine. And, one of the dangers right now, and I've been talking about this a lot on my podcast, and that is the United States right now is going through a Pluto return. Now, people might say, what the heck is that, right? Well, every 250 years, approximately, Pluto makes a fancy word called a synodic cycle around the solar system. So the United States is going to be 248 years old this year. So it's not exactly 250. It's somewhere between 245 and 250 years. Nations either rise and fall. Well, you don't need a brick to fall on your head to see what's going on in this country right now. George Washington said, if you want to destroy a country, loot the treasury. Well, that's exactly what they're doing. And the borders are being flooded. We're seeing it attacked from every angle. The petrochemical, and it's really not fossil, it's called petrochemical. Rothschild put the fossil fuel brand on oil. It's many scientists will tell you that oil is a chemical process in the earth. He shut it all down. And the United States is in grave danger right now. And one of the things that is really important, and I was talking about this on my last podcast, Uranus takes 84 years to go around the solar system. Well, guess what? Let's roll the clock back 84 years. What was happening? Hitler was in power. He was bombing Europe. World War II was starting. Let's go 84 years before that. The Civil War in the United States. So the United States right now, and the whole world at large, has Uranus has just entered in a sidereal zodiac into the sign of Taurus. Now you might say, okay, so what? What does it mean? Well, it's going to join one of the most malefic fixed stars in the Pleiades coming right up on July 12th. And I was just on the phone today with someone in London. They're saying, wow, we can't believe it. They're talking war over here. Germany's talking war. Everybody's gearing up. In fact, they just passed a law today that every 18-year-old in the United States to 26 has to be automatically registered for the draft. So, it's kind of inconceivable that we're talking about this in 2024, but yet Uranus just clocked in to that sidereal sign, and it's going to join Mars and this very malefic star right on about the 12th or 14th. It goes on mostly in the middle of July. And the second Pluto return happens on the United States right about then. Do you know the petrodollar just expired?
Yeah. That is
nothing to worry about, folks. That just means that your money could swirl down the drain if the other countries flush our treasury bonds.
Well, you know that. I think that is already planned. You know that.
Oh, yeah. They've been trying to get the OPEC nation to renew it, and they won't.
No, that's the scary part. And again, I got a funny feeling. First, it's going to be real estate. It's going to collapse. And then you're going to go to the bank, and your money's worthless.
I hope not, but it's a very scary time, and I think it's been engineered. George Carlin, speaking of George, he had it right. He said, forget about the politicians. You have owners. They own you. They own everything. There's a little district in London, and we can actually thank Woodrow Wilson, because at the end of 1913, he ratified it, signed the Federal Reserve Act in. Nobody knows who these guys are. They own this place. They print the money. And I think Rothschild said it best. He says, you give me control of the currency. He says, I don't care who makes the laws. And this is what we're seeing right now is, I was talking to Rand Paul for a brief second at the Reagan Library. I couldn't talk to him long. He was book signing. And, there's grave concern about what's going on. And we see what's going on in the District of Criminals, also known as Washington, D.C. And it's clearly scary right now. But I believe, again, divinity always rules. George Washington had some of the most amazing paranormal experiences. He had an angel visit him 3 times. And this is well documented. And they said that he was destitute, in Valley Forge, and they were starving. They were out of everything. And this angel visited him and told him, do not give up. This country is going to succeed, and it's going to be a great nation. And we know the history, right? And against all odds, they shouldn't have won up against a very well fortified and equipped and trained army like the British were, especially with the manufacturing capabilities that they were able to bring over. And yet it won. And I really believe the United States, they can say what they want about the Masons, but this country was, if you read the Constitution and the Bill of Rights, which I have, and they're profound. I think that's some of the most profound documents that we've ever had. And the astrology shows we are right now at a crossroads where this country is either going to be destroyed or it's going to be the phoenix rising out of the ashes. And I hope for the latter, because even though all this astrology shows we're in a crap storm right now, it's really, really dire. I think much more so than we realize. But if we can pull through into 2025, so this is a very challenging time that we're really in, we have progressions going on. There's a Jupiter trining the United States sun, and it comes in 2025. But I think between now and then, it's going to be a blur.
That's what's scary. I still have an answer what we can do. And it's a bad joke, and maybe I should have, maybe George maybe did. But what we need to do is get a couple bus, go down to Skid Row, the worst Skid Row we can find, and get a couple 100 bottles of Muscatel. Let's load these winos on the truck, take them up to Washington, D.C., replace the Congress and Senate, and the biggest wino of all, replace the president with them. We can't do any worse.
Well, our commander in soiled briefs is...
I'm sorry. Yeah,
he's beyond. He's clearly beyond help. I mean, I'm really waiting to see how this debate is going to go on the 27th. I'm waiting to see.
I don't know. When you talk about soiled briefs, that was over in France, right?
Yeah. Well, and a few times from what we've seen. Yeah.
Yeah. I guess a lot of people were staring at it. Was behind them.
That's what I call him now, the commander in soiled briefs. Yes, but he's gone, guy. I mean, I don't know how he's going to function here. And there's so many. Look at Merrick Garland has refused to turn over the tapes, and that's in contempt of the House ruling that he has to. He's in contempt of, and they won't do anything about it. They're just basically saying, screw you. You know, the American legal system is the finest system money can buy. And I got to tell you, it's kind of scary. You know, Thomas Jefferson actually passed a law, and it was ratified by the 13 states. This is very interesting. I found out about this. People can research this online. There were some detectives who actually discovered this up in your area, up in the Oregon, Washington area. And they saw that the 13th Amendment prior to the Civil War was that no barrister could hold office in the United States White House. And barrister, of course, we know today as an attorney. And that was ratified by all 13 states. They printed like 10,000 copies. Well, guess what? The War of 1812, and then, of course, the Civil War broke out, and it got buried. And it's still a legal binding document if they could ever reignite it. And it was to keep attorneys out of the inner core of politics. And of course, what are we seeing right now is the, you know, the warfare, the lawfare. It's just absolutely crazy what's going on.
It is. And again, boy, our time is up, and I want you to say thank you to your wife for me. And
sure,
and you know, I wish she could have been here with you tonight.
Yeah, she's been on your show.
Yeah. Well, she's on chat right now, and also I want to thank you so much. And again, share if you have a website.
JeffHarman.com. I do readings all the time. I do gemstones. Again, go to our podcast. It's Jeff Harman Astrologer or Jeff Harman Vedic Astrologer. That's HARMAN. And I'm also on Twitter. I'm just coming up to speed on Twitter because I'm always so busy, but I've got some good help here. But it's X is at Jeff Harman Astro. So it's at Jeff Harman Astro. And we got the YouTube, which is again Jeff Harman Astrologer, and then there's also Instagram too. So, and my website is the easiest way to get in for readings and such. But it's been a real magic carpet ride for me to help people to see in readings the functions. And I'm just amazed. The Earth is a time machine. It really is. It's a magical time machine for us all. And I don't think there's anything quite as profound as the ancient Vedic and Nadi astrology, because it really treats us as spiritual beings in this short time frame we call lives.
And so very well put. Hey, my friend, I want you, or I should say, hey, brother, ride safe, will you?
Yes.
Okay, my friend, you take care.
You bet. Thanks, Gary, for having me on. It was great.
Okay, I really enjoyed it. You take care.
You as well. Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you. Well, JC, let's do this little break, and then we'll be back for a wrap-up of the show. So stay tuned.
The brightest star on the red carpet and on the air with Gary Anderson. Ladies and gentlemen, you know, when it comes to the big get, Gary's got him. Like voiceover artist Jim Meskimen. Is his mom really Mrs. C on Happy Days? Allison Arngrim from Little House on the Prairie. Oh, speaking of Little House, Gary's got Dean Butler from the show talking about his book, Prairie Man, My Little House Life and Beyond. Here's much more. Yeah, there is. Check this out. Loretta Swit, Hot Lips Houlihan from MASH. So listen to Gary Anderson, because you never know who's gonna show. That's why we do these promos, right? Gary Anderson, where the stars come out to play. Tune in early, tune in often, right here on the Night Dreams Talk Radio Network.
And we are back, JC. Who's our guest on a Thursday? Now, next Thursday, we're going to drop down to one guest on Thursdays. Who's our guest next Thursday?
Our guest is going to be Mr. Marcus Allen, the UK editor of the Nexus magazine, and he's going to be talking about pyramids. Gary, listen, he can tell you stuff about the pyramids that will be mind-blowing.
Well, that is what we need to talk about. And then Friday, it is up in the air. If it rains, well, then I'll be on. If it's sunny, well, then I'm going to be off, because in our studio, we're going to get a new roof put on. And and they're going to be working till about 7 o'clock that night on Friday of next week. So that means no way could I do a show with all the hammering it's going to be on. But keep looking at our website on Facebook and all that stuff, because of the weather here. Well, in the Northwest, you never know. One day it's sunny, the next day it's pouring down rain. Again, I want to thank June Gypsy, December, Metatron Power and Light, Tom, and everybody else, and Carmel and all that. It's been on chat, and the people hit on chat. There's a lot of people that actually don't click on it, but they're there. And again, all the people who subscribed to our YouTube channel this past month in the Philippines, in even Argentina, believe it or not, Mexico, Puerto Rico. We actually got a lot of people that subscribed in Puerto Rico. And Jamaica. I want some Jamaica rum. Jamaica butter rum. That is so good. And, again, Malaysia and all the India and Canada, the UK, New Zealand. Yes, we got been getting a lot of subscribers from New Zealand. And on the internet side, now we've been averaging between 500,000 and 1 million consistently. And, one thing, what I found, unique, JC, is after this show's over with, by tomorrow, I bet you there'll be a couple thousand people that have watched it.
Oh, there easily will, because after all, we are worldwide, and a lot of people download things, but they don't download and watch YouTube. They watch it afterwards. And of course, you mentioned New Zealand and Australia. There's 15, 18 hours difference. So yeah.
Yeah, and in South Africa, I was looking at it today because, my studio program tells me where our audience is. Here's another thing I found strange. 25 to 35 is our core viewer group now.
Yeah, and didn't you pick up a lot of Canadians too, I think?
Oh, yes. Yeah, they said they're tired of that other show up in the one that controls the nighters, whatever they're saying.
Anyway. Yeah. So yes, it's a big spike on the YouTubes, and definitely can see that. Even the past shows have gained a lot of views.
Yeah. So I want to thank everybody who's made this happen. I mean, it was a shock to go from, we were making fun of it, because like I said at the early part of the show, I never put any effort into YouTube. Never. I was more concerned about radio stations and all the apps like Apple, iHeart, TuneIn, and all those speaker and all that. I was concentrating on building that up. I never thought YouTube. And then all of a sudden, a month ago, I put the effort in and then since then, it's like over 1,000 a day.
Yeah, we've got a couple that's really has spiked, as a matter of fact. And yeah, I'm sure tonight's be one to gain a lot of them in the next couple of days.
I don't know. YouTube is really funny. If you talk any political stuff, what happens.
Yeah. Well, yeah, yes. Plus, they community standards, they're guidelines, but there's don't really give you.
I don't know what you can talk about.
That's what I mean.
I guess you can talk about how to make money on YouTube. Then you'll go viral. You'll get hundreds of thousands of millions of views, or how to get more subscribers on YouTube. You can go viral that way, or how to make thumbnails for your YouTube channel, and you can go viral that way. But doing a talk show is a little bit different. I don't know.
Yeah. And again, they don't give you like a booklet by the guidelines of what to do, what not to do.
No, it's there. It's just, yeah, the guidelines, it's really weird. And, I pay, and I have license for our music. I buy every song I buy, and believe me, it's expensive. I buy a music license, one-time play. So every time I play a song, it's licensed. But then I have to fight YouTube afterwards because, that's a violation of copyright. I have to prove it, even though it's there. In the, information, if you check the bio on YouTube, it's there. But, that's how it is, I guess. I don't know. But how do you guys out there like the bumper music compared to what we used to play? That is what I want I want your feedback on that. Because, again, I'm trying to bring music that we all remember from the 70s, 80s, and 90s when, talk radio was king and it was interesting. and fun to listen to. And that's what I'm trying to do with the show. I'm not all hyped up like some people, and
Yeah. Wait a minute. You just were talking about being naked and afraid, and
yeah, but that's fun, because if you go back in radio in the 60s and 70s and 80s, remember what DJs used to do? It was fun. Now it's all recorded, and it's no fun to it.
Yeah, I remember Rick Dees and the Wolfman Jack. Remember?
Oh yeah, I know who Wolfman Jack was.
Wolfie. Yeah.
Danny Holiday, Andy Barber, which was one of the names I used. But yeah. But anyway, I want to jump out of here. Again, I want to thank everybody. Make sure you give us a thumbs up. And if you haven't subscribed to the channel, please do. And if you're watching this after the show's over, again, tell your friends about us and give us a thumbs up. And JC, are you doing anything exciting this weekend?
Well, I am going to once again try to catch those big bass I've been talking about, and I'm going to have a little barbecue and, of course, mow the yard. And I might do a little paranormal something. You never know.
Well, you better watch out, because when you're looking for that bass, if you fall in them, a catfish might get you. They just found a catfish here back about a month or two ago with a body in it.
Oh yeah, listen, those things are no joke. They had divers years ago here in a local lake. They come up out of the water quick because they seen a catfish big enough. They thought, well, we might eat them.
I don't know. I don't know if they would eat you alive, or they're a scrounge.
Yeah.
Yeah. There's a body.
Yeah. Listen, catfish will eat anything it can get in its mouth, even something almost as big as it is.
That's why I don't. When people years ago, I had a friend that, hey, what you want to come over? What are you having? Oh, catfish.
Yeah.
No, thank you. I mean, that's like, having fish in your septic tank, isn't it?
Yeah, I just had some fried catfish tonight, but mine was farm raised, which is much different.
Yeah, you think.
I think.
You don't ever know what they throw in there. Well, till guess on Wednesday. Who's your guest on Wednesday?
Steve Starr is going to be on talking about nuclear wars and all the things that can happen from afterwards, before, and during.
Oh, that sounds like a warmy and fuzzy show.
There's going to be a lot of wars, but yeah, warm and fuzzy.
Good thing you're not on YouTube, because that would be taken down.
That's right. And I don't have I still have flashbacks of that metal desk in first grade. We'd have these drills.
Yeah, well, what is the metal desk going to do? You're going to crawl underneath it? Do you realize how big these things are now?
Yeah, I know.
Yeah, I mean, it's not going to do you any good.
No.
Honestly, I'll be honest with you. Even if you have a fallout shelter in your yard, it's buried 10 feet down, it's just going to be a sealed coffin.
Well, Reagan tried to reverse psychology people when they dig in their own coffin, didn't he?
Well, yeah, dig a hole 6 feet down, put some doors above it, and put 3 feet of soil on it. That is going to do anything. Maybe if the detonation was miles and miles away, but if it was anywhere near it, hey, guess what? We don't have to put a body away.
Yeah, it's like, you took yourself out and took care of the job for us. So thank you very much.
Everybody have a good one. Enjoy the weekend. We will catch you next week. Oh, boy, it was an interesting show tonight. And again, I want to thank, Thomas James and,
Jeff Harman.
Jeff Harman. Yeah, my mind just had a brain fart on my age. I don't know. Everybody have a good one. We'll catch you on the other side of the campground.
You remind me of something I can't find with words. You remind me of what it's like to